I've received a question here that I'd like to share with you, and it deals with marriage. Let me read the question I was asked. Dear Father Tom, my fiance and I have been living together for about 2 years now. We plan to get married once we get the money saved for the wedding we plan. When I went to speak to the priest at our parish, he said he would not marry us. Outrageous, he said we are living in sin. I'm really mad. My fiancé and I are good people. We go to church every Sunday and we receive communion. We can't move to separate apartments because of the cost. Shouldn't the pastor consider these factors and give us a break? We want to be married in the church, but its demands are too steep. What should we do? Well, I'm always trying to be sympathetic to any individual who will come for preparation for marriage. And it is a preparation. If we would contrast that with a civil marriage, my gosh, all it takes is meeting a clerk and a magistrate and showing some identification and signing some documents and you're married. And if you want to dissolve that, you can do it through the mail. And what distinguishes that from the Catholic marriage, the sacrament of matrimony, is there's no requirement of a commitment. Now the state does require a certain commitment once you agree to their license, particularly involved with children. But by and large, there's little or no commitment involved. Now in this question, incipient in that question is a great deal of ignorance. Now, I wouldn't call that person ignorant. I would just simply say that he doesn't know the faith. And I'm happy to hear that he and his fiancée do go to Mass and they say they receive communion. Should I assume at that point they're not having sexual relationships and they're living together as virgins? I don't know. I'd have to interview the person to understand all that. So I'm reluctant to make any judgment about the person themselves, as I should be. But generally speaking, when a person is preparing for the sacrament of matrimony in the Catholic Church, it requires at least 6 months advance notice and time spent in the preparation. I've spent as long as a year helping individuals deal with that. And you might say, well, what's all the fuss about? The fuss is dealing with the most important thing, generally speaking, in a man and a woman's life. And at stake here is a commitment. For most people, the most important, arduous commitment they can make in their life with potentially the greatest rewards. And there's certain conditions involved in reception of the sacrament of matrimony. And that's what the interview with the priest would be all about. First, there are some general introductions to find out about their lives, sharing some facts, and then dealing with their own family, perhaps, and their circumstances. There where you begin to discover what their actual preparation for marriage is. And today, there's so poor preparation for marriage. Many young people today come from families which have experienced divorce and have little sense of what a successful marriage is about. And a successful marriage has not only a great deal of challenges, but a great deal of rewards. And usually they involve children, and yet we deal in a world of contraception and abortions. And how much is that flavored or disfavored the whole notion of what marriage consists of? The validating purpose of marriage is it's a commitment for life. To life do we part. And this is the major difference. It's what we call a covenant. Now there are 3 parties involved in a covenant. Not just the potential husband and wife, but God himself. And when we look at creation, the story of creation in Genesis is made very, very clear. Even Jesus himself repeated the covenant that we find in sacred scripture, where Jesus says, what God has put together, let no man separate. And here was an instance where the Jews of his day thought that they could dissolve their relationship, their marriage, with a bill of divorce, much as people do today, and Jesus disavowed that completely. And if we look at the reason behind it, 2 basic factors. The first factor is that This is part of growing up in marriage. I think it's to be recommended that young people marry because it's part of the process of them growing up. And to grow up in this world, to be fulfilled, and this may astonish some people, it's increasing one's sense of generosity. The willingness not to be served, but to serve. And these are the exact words that Jesus used concerning marriage. Once you have that sense of giving and the joy in giving to another and the gift that they receive from you, then you're disposed to have children. And the joy you share in the discovery of yourself and your own children makes marriage a glorious experience. But when you experiment with it, playing house, for instance, thinking that, well, somehow we'll work out whether we appreciate being married or not, but actually what's occurring is that you're instilling in yourself bad habits. And the bad habit is, I can have a sexual relationship or other kind of relationship with an individual without any commitment. There is a joy in a proper commitment. And that is the joy that matures people, recognizing and understanding in my ability to help others improve as they help me to improve, to realize who I fully am as a man, and that ultimately is realized in what? A man is not a man until he becomes a father. A woman is not a mother until she has a child. And it's interesting too, if you think about it, of the 10 Commandments, 3 of them deal directly with marriage. The 4th commandment, honor being a father and a mother. The 6th commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. The 10th commandment, do not covet another man's wife or another woman's husband. And then we consider the first 3 commandments. They all deal with our familial relationship with God. Honor God. Meet Him on His day of celebration, on the Sabbath. Do not take His name in vain. So the whole thrust of our relationship deals with marriage, one form or the other. And Jesus Christ always described Himself as the bridegroom. And who is the bride? All of us. We who are in the church. We should take our model from Him when we consider being married. And we do that by taking the necessary disciplines, remaining chaste, considering the needs of the other person. And if you have 2 people dealing in that sense, then you have the prospects of a good marriage. And hopefully any 2 individuals to come into church in preparation for the sacrament, along with the priest, they can begin to appreciate the joy and the sacrifice in this wonderful sacrament of marriage. You know, one of the reasons why I became a priest is that I could be a father of a different sort. And keep in mind, you don't have to biologically necessarily have a child to be a father. As George Washington is the father of our nation, and mothers, you know, I understand there's going to be a new release of Star Wars, and believe me, there will be a mothership there. Everything is relational. And so marriage is the discovery of our relationship, our deep relationship of ourselves with others. And that is the great joy we offer in the church in the sacrament of matrimony.